Of Cook's Illustrated magazine. It's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes. With Adam Reed in the Equipment Corner and Jack Bishop in the Tasting Lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters. Today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget uncovers the secrets to making oatmeal using steel-cut oats in just 10 minutes. Next, Adam reveals his top pick for mocha pots in the Equipment Corner. And finally, Julia shows Chris how to make perfect home fries. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. From our family to yours, fresh from the field, Foxy organic vegetables. Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Wente Vineyards, family-owned, estate-grown, sustainably farmed since 1883. Lee Kum Kee, providing authentic Chinese sauces for the past 125 years.
We're here in the test kitchen to talk about oatmeal, America's favorite breakfast. Turns out there are three kinds. The first is steel cut. They've been cut with steel blades so they cook a little faster. Then we've got rolled oats, steamed so they're soft, and then rolled flat. Finally, instant oatmeal that's been pre-cooked and dried, so all you have to do is add boiling water. We've asked a bunch of folks to come here and do a blind tasting of these three, see which they like best. This morning, we're going to have you taste some oatmeal. So we just have 3 little bowls of oatmeal here, and all you have to do is tell us which one you like best. What do you think?
Tastes like oatmeal. This one has more substance for sure.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's good.
Okay.
I think it's good. I like a heartier oatmeal.
Okay.
This is like Quaker rolled oats.
Your favorite was?
Favorite was the chewy guy right here.
Well, you picked steel cut oats, which are oats that have just been cut with steel and cooked. So tell us which one you prefer and why.
It's nice and chewy.
This is traditional steel cut oats.
I like it, actually.
Okay.
More of an experience.
More of an oatmeal experience. The one that you chose is the steel cut oats.
It's got some texture to it, which I like.
That's traditional steel cut oats.
There were things you actually have to chew through.
This is steel cut oats. Would you spend 40 minutes making this on a weekday morning?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No, I don't eat breakfast.
Would you make it on a weekday morning if it took 10 minutes?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'd do that.
All right, Chris, the people have spoken. Almost everybody wants steel cut oats, but almost nobody wants to spend 40 minutes making it. So your challenge is, can you bring the time down to a reasonable amount and still keep the same flavor and texture?
Thank you, Doc. The people have spoken, and they always speak. They say what? They
challenge us.
They challenge us because they want it quicker and easier.
Yes,
that's what
always.
people always want. Well, 200 years ago, a lot of people thought that oats were for horses, not for people. Your husband's from Scotland.
He is.
And I bet he took offense when Samuel Johnson said, oats are a grain which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people.
Yeah, I think that was a dig at the Scots.
Anyway, about 250 years ago, they actually used the whole groat. It was hulled. That's the fruit of the oat grain, which meant they had to cook it for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So how would they like that?
Not very well.
Fanny Farmer actually had a recipe, cooked it overnight. Of course, these days, they're cut into pieces.
Sure.
So we're already ahead of the game.
We are already ahead of the game.
Okay, so 2 quick fun facts.
Okay.
How many rolled oats in an 18-ounce box of Quaker, old-fashioned
Wow.
Quaker oats? How many? Guess.
2 billion.
28,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was only off by that much.
In South America, Quaker oats are referred to as the oats of the little old man.
Oh, that's
Isn't that
perfect.
cute? So we're not going to start with those. We're going to start with steel cut oats.
We
okay?
are. So we have a few different kinds of oats here to look at. These are the old-fashioned oats, and a lot of people cook with these. They take about 5 to 10 minutes to cook, but these start with whole oats, or the groats that have been steamed and pressed, so they're rolled. Ergo the name, rolled oats. And, you know, they're okay, but they're kind of mushy. Now, really mushy are the instant oats, which are the rolled oats that have been pre-cooked partially. And these are basically wallpaper paste. But you do get a lot of nice flavor variations. So we're going to think about that as we work with our favorite, which is, these are the steel cut oats. These are the whole groats that have been literally cut crosswise into these little pellets. They're as hard as heck, and they take at least 40 minutes to cook.
But that's better than 3 or 4 hours back in the 1800s.
Definitely. But, you know, I mean, you're busy in the morning, you don't have all that time. I don't have time for 40-minute oatmeal. So what we looked for was a way to really shorten the cooking time on the morning that we wanted to eat them. So, you know, oats are a little bit, especially dried oats, they're a little bit like if you think about dried beans. You know, you cook with dried beans, they take forever. So we always look for ways to kind of soften the beans and pre-cook them. We tried soaking them in just regular water, and it didn't really do too much. We also tried cooking the oats with a little bit of baking soda. And we used that for a polenta recipe once, and it actually sped up some time, but it only cut 5 minutes off.
I mean, it softens the outer hull.
That's exactly right. But the winning method that we found was we went back to soaking overnight, but what we use here instead is boiling water. So let me just crank this up. This is 3 cups of boiling water, and the boiling water mixed with the oats is just going to soften it just enough. So we've got 3 cups of water to 1 cup steel cut oats. Just going to move this lid over to the side here for a second. And scoot this off the heat, as we're done with the water at this point. Now we're just going to stir in the oats. That's 1 cup, the steel cut oats.
So 3 to 1 water to oats is a typical ratio for oatmeal,
At this point, we're actually going to use 4 to 1 liquid to oats total, but we're just starting with 3. So we've got a ½ a teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to make a flavored apple cinnamon oatmeal here. It's going to taste great. So that's why we're using a ½ a teaspoon of salt. If we were just making a plain oatmeal, we cut that amount down to a ¼ teaspoon. So we're just going to stir this. It looks really watery, not very good. Put the lid back on. We're just going to let this sit here overnight, and it'll be ready to cook in about 10 minutes tomorrow.
What time should I set my alarm for tomorrow?
6:30. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, we have a little bit of time to prep some of our other ingredients. Now I mentioned apple cinnamon, and walnuts go perfect with that. And we're just going to toast these. That'll cut down our prep time tomorrow. It's very easy to toast the nuts. There we go. Medium heat. We just want to shake the pan. Keep an eye on it. You don't want to walk away. You'll start smelling the walnuts, and they'll start to turn a little bit of a deep color. That's just going to take a few minutes.
I always wonder, because I'm like the people in our little survey.
Yep.
I like doing things quickly. Do you really have to do this?
Yes, you do.
Toasting the nuts? And if I don't toast the nuts, what does it do?
Oh, toasting, definitely, especially with walnuts. I don't like raw walnuts myself. I love toasted walnuts. Deepens their flavor. It also helps develop the sugars inside the walnuts so it tastes more rounded.
So I have to do it.
I think so. All right, so let's check out the oats after the overnight soak. And there they are. So they've plumped up. They've softened just a bit.
They almost look cooked.
Yeah, they do almost look cooked, but they're still a little bit crunchy. They need to be finished off just now. This is a ½ a cup of apple cider. Yum, yum, yum. And a ½ a cup of whole milk. It's going to add that nice creaminess and make it kind of like a pudding, which is delicious. All right.
So if I just wanted plain oatmeal instead of the cider, I could just use water.
You sure could.
Right.
Yeah. You seem like a plain oatmeal kind of guy.
I am a plain oatmeal kind of guy.
All right, well, let's sweeten some things up here. I've got 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar and a little bit of cinnamon, a ½ a teaspoon. Now we've got one more addition here. I've got some apple. And we want to grate this. I want about a ½ a cup of grated apple. And this is a Fuji apple. It has a really nice sweet and a little bit tart flavor. And you're just going to get these pockets of slightly softened apple. And it's always best to do this at the last minute because apple, as you know, tends to turn brown. All right, there we go. ½ a cup. Let's crank that. So once it's up to a simmer, we're actually going to reduce the heat down to medium and let that bubble until it starts to get nice and thick and like a pudding. In the meantime, I can go ahead and chop those walnuts. Just a nice rough chop here. We'll only use about 2 tablespoons per serving. You know, this oatmeal is actually, it's very easy to make flavor variations. Of course, we're doing apple cinnamon. That's a pretty standard variation, but we also have a great carrot spice one that's very interesting, has grated carrot in it. But my favorite has to be the coconut and banana.
The coconut rum? Is that the word you
No,
really like?
coconut banana is so
Really?
good. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's all we have to do right now. We just have to wait for that to come to the boil. All right, Chris, this is the finished oatmeal. Now, once it was done cooking, I let it sit here uncovered for about 5 minutes, and that way you can kind of firm up a little bit. If you actually cook it until it looks completely thick and then let it firm up, you'll have spackle. Not good.
So when you do this, actually, it's pretty loose.
Yeah, it is.
When you stop cooking.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. All right. How about a nice big hearty bowl? Oatmeal. Look at that. It's all creamy and custardy. Mmm. There you go. And here's some
Thank you.
toasted walnuts for you. Now, if you like, you can always pour over a little bit of honey or maple syrup, a little bit of cream, a little bit more brown sugar.
That is excellent.
I mean, the oats are completely softened, but they still have that nice chew.
So this has real flavor. You know those little packets of instant oatmeal you get,
Right.
which are all flavored?
Right.
Well, it's like wallpaper paste, as you said, with flavors. So this has actually got great texture and great flavor.
Those little bits of apple, really nice.
So there you have it. Actually, Bridget took the challenge and you won. And the answer was the night before, soak in 3 cups of hot water, 1 cup of steel cut oats. Off the heat, let it sit with the top on. The next day, about 10 minutes of cooking with an extra cup of liquid, and you can flavor it with cider, whatever you like. So there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, an excellent recipe for steel cut oats in just 10 minutes. I am completely dedicated to the perfect cup of coffee, so over the many years, I've spent over $200 on the Technivore Mocha Master drip machine. I've tried Melita, I've tried Chemex, I've tried French press. About 3 years ago, a friend of mine gave me one of these little mocha pots for the top of the stove like they use in France, and it made a surprisingly good dark cup of coffee. So I asked Adam to research these to see if the basic model is still the best or whether there's something new in the world of stovetop coffee machines.
And I did, Chris. When we went out shopping for them, you can see that we came up with a lineup of 7 machines. Those 4 in front of you are the electric machines. They ranged in price from $30 to $100. These 3 are the stovetop machines, and they ranged in price from $25 to $47. Now, the way this works, it's called a stovetop espresso machine. It does use pressure to brew the coffee, but it's not as much pressure as a true espresso machine. So you get dark, rich, complex coffee, but you don't get that crema that you only get with a lot of pressure in a true espresso machine. We tinkered with these electric machines every which way, and we never really got coffee that was as nuanced and as complex and as rich as we thought it should be. And so we eliminated those right off the bat. If we couldn't get a good cup of coffee out of it, we weren't interested. That left us with these 3 stovetop machines, and they're pretty easy to use as long as you follow a certain technique, which is also easy to master. There are 5 steps. The first one is that you want to fill the bottom with water. You want to come just to the bottom of this valve. You don't want to cover the valve. You have to leave enough space at the top of this container for steam to build up, and that is going to force the water up through the coffee, make the coffee, and into the top pot. You want to use coffee that is ground a little bit coarser than for true espresso, and this is the filter it goes into. You put the coffee in here. The third step is to tamp it down just a little bit. A lot of the directions for these say not to do that, but we had really good luck and got better coffee when we compacted it just a bit. So the coffee's in here, that goes in the bottom. You screw on the top like that. You put it on the heat, and you want to use medium-high heat. If you have a gas stove and you can see the flame, we like it to be just underneath the pot but not go up around it. The 5th step is that this is best served when it's absolutely fresh, so you want to pull it off the heat as soon as you think the coffee is done brewing, and I listen for that. When I hear that the gurgling has stopped, I pull it right off. This was the winner in the end, and it is the original one. This is the Bialetti Mocha Express. It was the least expensive one we tested at $25, and the coffee that it made was really good. It was complex, it was nuanced, it had just the right bitterness. It was wonderful coffee, and it's a great way to go about it. Give me a little cheers,
That's
Chris.
good. Yeah. I feel like I'm in Paris. So once in a while, the original models are the best, just like us. You can buy the Bialetti Mocha Express for $25. Makes great coffee right on your stovetop. So I have a very simple question you have to answer me, which is why do they call home fries? Because nobody in their right mind would make them at home.
I know, they're diner fries.
They're diner fries.
That's a good question.
And I've done this a few times, and it's just hours of work. And
And why do they call a driveway and a parkway a parkway? I don't know.
We could be here a long
We
time,
could.
folks. So I want an easier way to do this.
All right, I don't blame you. And plus you want to make enough for a crowd because, you know, just making enough for 3 or 4 people, they go fast. You want to make a lot. So that was our goal, to make a lot of home fries for a good-sized crowd. First thing, of course, we tested different types of potatoes, Yukon Golds and Reds, but really no potato had the deep flavor that a russet had. So this is a russet potato, which we're going to quickly peel and cut into 3/4-inch dice, which is nice and big, but obviously the dice makes them cook through evenly. All right, make sure I get all the brown spots off. All right, we'll get rid of these peels, and now we'll cut it into 3/4-inch dice. And the easiest way to do that, of course, is to cut the potato into planks that are about 3/4 inches thick, and then you can put the planks flat side down on the cutting board, and then you can cut them crosswise into 3/4-inch chunks. So now this is 3.5 pounds of potatoes, which will serve, 6 to 8 people. And home fries are usually done in a skillet, of course, but when you do this amount of potatoes in a skillet, it's a lot of batches and in and out of the pan. So,
really?
Yeah, just a little bit.
I'm familiar with the problem.
So we wanted to do them in the oven. But the problem with the oven is that even when we used a 500-degree oven and a preheated baking sheet, we never got that crispness on the exterior of the potato. So we solved that by parboiling. So what we're going to do is we have 10 cups of boiling water here. And the interesting thing about this, of course, is that we usually start potatoes in cold water and bring them up so they cook through evenly. We want the opposite here. We want the worst cooked potato you've ever seen, so it's overdone on the outside and raw in the middle. Because that overdone outside potato, those broken down starches, that's what's going to brown and turn crisp in the oven.
So this is a perfect recipe for me.
Yeah.
I have to make the worst potatoes ever.
That's right. So boiling water, 10 cups. We're also going to add a little bit of baking soda. This is half a teaspoon of baking soda, and that baking soda will help the potatoes on the exterior break down and really release the starches so that they'll get nice and crisp in the oven. And we're not going to boil them until they're cooked through. We're just going to bring them to a boil and cook them for 1 minute so they cook on the outside but the inside is still raw. All right, so it came to boil. I put that timer on for a minute. There we are. So potatoes are not cooked through yet, which is all right. We're going to drain them. All right, we're going to put the pot back on the stove. And here, I'm going to pull a potato out and just see if we can see the texture of it. Dry it off a little bit.
You promised me the worst cooked potatoes.
Yeah, I deliver. So you can see the edges have softened, and it's got that pasty exterior on the outside, which is perfect.
Starchy exterior.
You can see, but the inside is very firm and raw.
Okay.
So that's perfectly
Horrid
badly
potatoes.
cooked. That's right. So we're going to put the potatoes back into the pot. And we're going to put the pot over low heat because we really just want to dry the exteriors out, get rid of some of that moisture. We're going to cook them for about 2 minutes over low heat.
Okay.
All right, so those potatoes look good and dry. And now we're going to turn off the heat and add 3 tablespoons of butter. Of course, this will help with the browning. It adds good flavor. This is 1.5 teaspoons of salt and just a little pinch of cayenne. Now we're going to stir this around until you really get a good, thick, starchy paste on the exterior of the potatoes. All right.
So is this a new show? Is this bad cooking from America's Test Kitchen? This looks terrible.
It looks terrible. They're raw on the inside, and they have that really thick, starchy paste on the exterior. But that's perfect for home fries because they'll brown really well in the oven. So I'm going to set this pot aside and go get that preheated baking sheet out of the oven. All right, so this baking sheet is good and hot. It was preheating in the 500-degree oven on the lowest rack, so this really near the bottom of the oven. So that's where all the browning occurs. And I'm going to put some oil on the baking sheet. This is 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and you can see how hot this baking sheet is because the oil just really turns very liquidy. All right, so now we're going to smooth the potatoes out.
Carefully put the potatoes on the sheet.
That sizzle means good crunch. So I'm going to spread the potatoes out so they have a lot of nice room to brown. You can just tell these are going to get nice and crisp. They have that starch on the outside. They're sizzling when they hit the hot baking sheet.
Things are starting to look up.
They are,
which
aren't
is
they?
good.
I'm going to put this back in that 500-degree oven for about 15 minutes.
So while the potatoes cook, let's talk a little bit about the science of how you get home fries that are brown and crispy on the outside. Well, there's a science trick. Let's start with potatoes. They're made up of cells. Inside the cells, there are starch granules. Inside the starch granules are starch molecules, the key one being amylose. Once amylose comes out, amylose, when heated, browns. It also does one other thing. It polymerizes, which means the molecules form together in a nice crispy sheet. So the whole trick here is getting the amylose out to the outside of the potato. The key was baking soda. Baking soda frees up the potato cells because they're held together by pectin, and that's attacked by the baking soda. The cell walls start to disintegrate, again, because of the baking soda. The starch granules come out, they swell in the water and the heat, and eventually that amylose leaks out and gets to the outside of the potato. Once that happens, it browns nicely, and you get a very crispy exterior.
All right, so you'll notice there was a crucial ingredient missing in those home fries, and of course that's...
I was too polite to ask.
that was the onion. Yep, and if you put the onions in the beginning, of course they'll burn by the time the potatoes are done, so we're going to add them partway through. We're going to cut these onions pretty large into half-inch dice, and you're going to need 2 onions. One's already done, so I'll just do the second one. And here's a trick that I think works pretty well. After you peel the onion, you have it through the root end, of course, so that it's perfect for chopping. You can peel back that top layer, which usually is kind of flimsy and blemished. You can use it as a handle, so you don't nick your fingers. So you can hold on to it this way if you're learning how to use a knife or you're sort of a beginner. I like that trick. All right, so that's 2 onions. We're going to toss them, of course, with a little bit of oil. This is a tablespoon of vegetable oil and a little bit of salt. This is half a teaspoon of salt. All right, so those potatoes have been in the oven for 15 minutes. Now we're going to take them out and we're going to add the onions. Oh, you can see they're getting nice and crunchy on the bottom. Here, we'll flip them over. See that nice browned exterior on the bottom. So you want to flip them over so that most of the brown sides are facing up so they can get browned on the second side. But of course I'm not going to go flipping every potato, so just do your best in flipping them over. All right, so now we're going to clear a little space right in the middle of the baking sheet. We're going to put the onions in the middle. That way they won't burn. Yeah, and they'll steam themselves a little bit as they cook, so they'll be nice and soft. So you put the onions in the middle.
Very smart.
Yeah, we're going to roast it for another 15 minutes like this, and then we're going to stir it all together and roast them until everything's done, and that'll be 5 to 10 minutes at the end. All right, so it's been about 15 minutes, and we're going to give the onions and potatoes a good stir and really mix them into the potatoes so they can start to get a little brown. And then we're going to continue to roast them for another 5 or 10 minutes till the potatoes are cooked through and good and golden. All right, so those potatoes are almost done. If you could give me a hand with the oven. Oh, those smell so good. Thank you, sir.
Those look great.
Don't they? Now I'm going to let them cool off just for a few minutes because they're ripping hot. Meanwhile, I'm just going to cut some chives.
They also don't look greasy, which is the other problem with home fries.
But they're going to taste plenty rich because remember we added that butter and there's a good amount of oil on that baking sheet. So I'm just going to mince up some chives for a garnish. So we're going to season these with just a little bit of pepper and they're good to go.
Should we wait just 30 seconds before we tuck into them? I'm a little worried.
Here, you know what? I'm going to transfer them to this platter, and that'll cool them off enough. I'm going to use a spatula to really make sure I can get them scraped nicely off this baking sheet. A few chives. Don't those look good? And they are ready to taste.
I don't have to go out to diners anymore.
No, you don't. Those onions, they just smell so good. There you go.
Thank you. Well,
these are good.
They're really crispy on the outside, but inside they're very light. They're pillowy. Yeah.
Yeah, fluffy on the inside. I just love that crust and the flavor.
You know, people always ask whether we really enjoy the food, but you don't close your eyes very often when you taste. You just did twice.
I love potatoes.
Which must mean that this was a home run,
It
right?
is. Total home run.
So for great home fries in your own home, we started with 3.5 pounds of russet potatoes, diced them in large chunks, put them in boiling water, but we used a little baking soda, which helped break them down and get them starchy on the outside. Then we dried them out, put them in a very hot oven on a preheated baking pan, and halfway through added the onions. And there you have it. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a fabulous version of home fries at home. You can get this recipe, all of our recipes from this season, at americastestkitchentv.com. Also find our tastings, our testings. You can also view selected episodes. These are an A.